What's going on, traders? We got a lot to talk about. You are not going to want to miss this video, so let's get straight into it. Very interesting day. We've been talking about these rising wedge patterns forming across the board for quite some time. And if you're new to the channel or you're new to trading in general, rising wedge patterns are typically bearish patterns, and they're very strong bearish patterns. And you see it here. I mean, we're looking at the daily time frame on the SPY. We rejected here, we rejected here, we rejected here. We attempted to break out here, but bulls continue to get trapped. And one thing I tell you guys all the time, if you've been with this channel for some time here, is that usually when you roll back into a pattern, you usually continue within that direction. And that's exactly what we're seeing here, where we broke out, and we talked about this in the last video, where we broke out or tried to break out, and then we started to roll back over. And usually when that happens, you continue in that direction towards the bottom of that pattern, no matter what that pattern is, whether it's an ascending triangle or a bull flag, a bear flag, whatever the case may be. Typically, when you roll back into that pattern like this, you tend to go in that direction. And so we're seeing exactly that. Now, is this the actual drop that we're talking about? Is this the drop of all drops? Is the market going to continue to crash or, correct from here? Whatever everybody else is saying out there. I'm sure there's a lot of YouTubers, screaming crash, or people on Twitter screaming crash. I don't think we're there yet. Okay. I know you guys are tired of that. I know you guys are tired of hearing me say that, as much as I pretty much anticipate a bearish move to happen sometime either this month or next. I still don't think we're quite there yet. I think we have one more bounce. And if you paid attention to the last video, this is pretty much the bounce that I am expecting, where we see that one final push. And I think it's going to be a pretty decent push, a big push, okay? And I could be wrong here, but I mean, look where we're at on a daily time frame on the spot. We're at the bottom of this wedge, but not only are we at the bottom of this wedge, but we have a reversal pattern here, a reversal hammer pattern, to be exact. And this is typically when this forms, you get some type of bullish upside either the next day or two, especially if it's forming on a downtrend. And again, we're on the daily time frame, so you have more bigger candles to work with here. And so what I'm expecting, at least for the next day or two, is that we potentially see one of these moves. We'll probably just, bounce from here, and then we'll start heading a little bit higher towards 587, somewhere around there, and then we start to continue to play games within this area until we finally break down. Now, if we do just so happen to break below this rising wedge, which I'm not necessarily counting on, but let's just say we do see that move happen, I imagine the SPY is going to want to head towards that 560 level. All right, but we're not quite there yet. We haven't broken below or anything like that. So we still want to remain somewhat bullish, but just pretty much be cautious in the next day or two, just in case we do break below these rising wedge patterns. And again, they're forming across the board. I mean, we can go to the 4 hour time frame, and you see another, reversal pattern on the 4 hour time frame as well. You see a reversal hammer pattern as well, which is typically a bullish sign when it's coming off a downtrend. So again, we could be looking at more upside towards at least 587 sometime between tomorrow and Friday. Most likely Friday, if anything. Okay, so that's what I'm looking for in regards to the SPY. We look at the triple Qs. Okay, the triple Qs is a little bit different here, and this is how you tend to get trapped. Okay, so we could be looking at a bear trap, especially considering what Tesla is doing for its earnings. We'll talk about Tesla in a bit, but we could be looking at somewhat of a bear trap here. I don't think the market is quite ready for a drop. Um, Usually, when you have, and we talk about this all the time on this channel, when you have these huge moves to the upside or even to the downside, typically what happens the next day or two is you get some type of recovery phase. You either recover, you consolidate, or you just cool down altogether, which I guess is consolidating, right? And so considering how much we move to the downside, I can only imagine that we're going to see um, some upside recovery. A dead cat bounce, I guess, would be the correct term here, where we start seeing that dead cat bounce heading into tomorrow. Okay, so we could be seeing that move happen. All right, so that's what I'm going to be looking for between tomorrow and Friday. Again, even though the triple Qs is breaking below its rising wedge and close below its rising wedge. I'm not yet convinced about this move, and we'll go deeper into why I'm not yet convinced here. And again, I could be wrong. I don't necessarily care for being wrong because I've been right all day about this drop and all week for quite some time. So I'm okay with being wrong every once in a while. But regardless, I just don't believe this move quite yet. Now, if this move is just so happens to be legit, then we could be looking at a move towards 470, 460. Okay. It's not going to happen all in one day, of course. I mean, if it does, that would be absolutely insane, but I don't think it's going to happen all in one day. I think we're just going to, see some type of, turbulence down there where we break, retest the wedge. This will be a more accurate depiction of it. But this is the move that I would be expecting if we just so happen to break lower. Now, in regards to upside, right? If we are talking about more upside and one final push, I think this final push that's going to happen to the upside is where we start seeing that 500, 505, 510 target. All right. So what do I tell you guys all the time on this channel? One thing I always try to tell you guys on this channel is the market goes down to make more room for upside. Why is that? If we zoom out, right? We can go to the weekly time frame. The market is more bullish than bearish. I mean, you see it right here. Clear as day. You zoom out, the market is more bullish than bearish. So anytime you drop, you're making more room for upside. I don't care what direction the market goes as long as it doesn't go to zero. Okay. As long as we're making money in the Discord, as long as we're making money, I necessarily don't care. But my overall point here is that the market drops just to make more room for upside. Okay. Majority bullish. Okay. So again, when we are looking at the daily time frame and we're talking about upside, right? We go to the daily time frame, we're talking about upside here. I think if we are going to see this huge and final push, 505 is on my radar. 505, 510. And look where it is. I mean, right there. Right at the top of this wedge, you're looking at about 506.5, 507. And I told you guys before that my all-time high target is about 510 for sometime this year. Ironic enough, right here, we haven't came back up here yet, so I do imagine at some point in time that's where we're going to head if we are going to see more upside. So I'm not yet convinced about this move. The market would just have to prove me wrong here. I think we're going to start seeing a recovery sometime between tomorrow and Friday. Okay, so that's what I'm looking at for the SPY and triple Qs. Now we can look at the Nasdaq. A lot of traders tend to not care about the Nasdaq, but I think it's very important that you do actually look at the actual futures, so that way you understand that you are getting trapped or not. Okay, so that's what I will be looking at if I'm trying to see like if the market's trying to bear trap us or bull trap us. Now, Nasdaq is very interesting, and I showed this in the Discord quite a few times where. I pretty much said the Nasdaq is going to head towards the 20,200. This is when the Nasdaq was like high 20,300s, and I think it's going to head lower. Okay, I don't think it's going to head lower from here. I think there's going to obviously be some type of retest, but again, I'm just still not convinced about this move quite yet. All right, so and here's what we're looking at. I mean, this is what we're looking at in regards to a potential move. So if we do head much lower on the Nasdaq, we're looking at a move all the way down. I mean, to like 19,600, 19,700. If we're talking about more downside. Now, if we are considering a bear trap happening here, just given off the SPY and a few other things we'll talk about in a bit, if we are talking about a bear trap, then I would be looking at a move back to this monthly level, which is about 20,900. I think that's reasonable enough because we haven't retested the monthly level. I mean, this is where we last hit it, and then we pretty much dropped from there. So I do think at some point in time, because we still haven't broken below these guys. I want to make this clear. We broke this trend, sure, that's great, that's awesome. We broke below the supply and demand zone, sure, that's great and awesome. But again, I'm not convinced, and we talked about this in the last video, guys. I'm not convinced until we clear these guys out. Until we clear these guys out, I'm not convinced just yet. Now, obviously, we traded the downside. We made money. Meta was an absolute banger. Google was a banger trade for us in the Discord. But regardless, I'm not committed to any downside until we clear these guys out. Again, we talk about turbulence all the time, and I'm just not yet convinced here. Okay, so once we break below these guys, then we can start talking about some massive downside, and then we can start talking about moves like this gap fill at around this area right here on the NQ, because we talked about this in the last video, and I've said this multiple times. Is very rare when the Nasdaq, the futures, leaves gaps open. Now Qs, they typically don't leave gaps open for very long, and the SPY. But when you're talking about NQ and ES, and they're leaving gaps open, you're looking at a huge move happening. And so I think that huge move is going to come. I'm just not buying it just yet. We look at the ES. Right. We look at the ES, and again, we have this gap right here. Let me actually map it out for you guys here. We have this gap down here, right? And I think at some point in time, we're going to want to fill that gap at 5,600. Again, I just don't think we're quite there yet. Now, what's interesting about the ES is that we hit this monthly level, and I believe I talked about this in the last video. If I didn't, I talked about it in the Discord. But regardless, we hit this monthly level right here with this yellow trend line. Yeah, I definitely talked about it in the last video. This yellow trend line here, we hit this resistance here monthly, by the way. We can actually go to the monthly. I keep saying monthly, but I'm not showing you guys monthly, right? Right here. I mean, look at that. You just bing, and then you just instantly reject it. Okay, so this monthly level is very strong here. So I just don't see us breaking above it. Can we retest it? And I encourage you guys to mark that level on your charts. I mean, right here, you can go to any time frame and pretty much see it as clear as day on the ES or even a SPY. And so if we are looking at one more retest, I would look at about 5,930 and then possibly rejection from there. I mean, we have plenty of space for newer highs that move towards 587 on the SPY. So that's what I would be looking at in regards to the ES. Now, in regards to downside, simple as that, we're looking at these fair value gaps that need to be mitigated to the downside. And my first target will be around 5,650. So that's what I'm looking at in regards to ES. Now, what's very interesting here, and this is another reason why I'm not yet convinced on a drop just yet, is NVIDIA. The market has been following NVIDIA like clockwork, right? But what's very interesting here is Apple. I think Apple was the main reason the market really took a dive. If there's other news out there, feel free to let me know. You guys know how I feel about news. If it's not like big tech or earnings or anything like that, I necessarily don't care. I keep it in the back of my mind, of course, but I don't like, grasp on news or absolutely put all my faith into CPI and things like that. I think the market cares more about big tech earnings more than anything. I think that is the driving force of the market. Why? Because that is a driving force for this country. Simple as that. Okay. So that's enough of my rambling, but NVIDIA. So we're at the bottom of this rising wedge on NVIDIA. And what do again, what happens when you drop? You're creating more space for upside. So Nvidia hasn't broken out of below its rising wedge just yet. So it's possible that we could recover and start heading towards 150 on Nvidia. So I would definitely keep an eye on Nvidia. And in order for that to happen, obviously the market would need to go higher as well. So this is another reason why I'm just not quite there yet or quite convinced that this is the drop of all drops. Now, by all means, if we do break below this rising wedge, then definitely be prepared for a drop. But I'm just not quite there yet in regards to the overall market. So what I would be looking at, I mean, it's even kind of bouncing after hours. It went to 137. It hit the bottom of this wedge, and then it immediately started to bounce here. And so one thing I would look for on Nvidia is if Nvidia gets back above 142, then we're definitely there's a high chance we're heading to 150, and I would definitely be looking to trade that if anything. So I mean, you guys know I'm not making this stuff up. We rejected here, we rejected here, we rejected here, bounce, bounce, bounce. Rising wedge ended up being formed, but we still have plenty of space here for another move to the upside on Nvidia. And after that move, I think that's it. I think we're done. Okay, if this move happens, I think we're absolutely done and we're cooked, and the market's just going to absolutely plummet from there. Okay, so triple Qs, I would be looking for 505, a potential move to 505. If anything, if you need some type of confirmation, I will look for. I will definitely pay attention to Nvidia. Watch Nvidia break above 142. If it gets above 142, that's confirmation that the market is not ready yet to drop. Okay, why? Because the market has been following Nvidia, so I think that goes without saying. And so another interesting thing that happened here is you're looking at SMH, and this is a semiconductor ETF, right? You look at SMH, and what's interesting here is you're kind of looking at the same scenario here. Now, what's really kind of like throwing me off here is that we broke below this trend here on SMH, but you have another trend forming as well. And if you guys don't know, you trends can be zones, okay? They can turn into zones, just like you have supply and demand zones. Trends can be zones too. All right. I know that sounds crazy, but feel free to look it up. Okay. But regardless, SMH is kind of recovering here. It's really tough to say, but if SMH can just stay above 250, we're not quite bearish yet. Okay. We're bearish, but we're not like full blown bearish. Okay. So I do think we're going to see at least one more retest. I think it's going to and it'll obviously motivate Nvidia, and then we'll start dropping from there. So it's tough to say where SMH is going to go from here. I had a target of 270, but at this rate and just how things are looking, I just can't see how the market will get SMH there, or SMH will get there itself. The reason why I have a target of 270, or I had a took target of 270, is we have this gap open right here. We have this fair value gap that's still open here. I mean, how it gets up there, I don't know. Okay, but again, it's Nvidia. SMH number one holding is Nvidia. So I mean, if anything can get SMH up to this level, it will be Nvidia. So we'll see. SOXX. Another semiconductor ETF, in case you don't know, another one that has this fair value gap that needs to be mitigated to the upside, and it just has one all the way at the 260s. Again, when this happens is really tough to say, and how it happens is tough to say as well. But if we're paying attention here, we see, I mean, and this is why I'm just not yet convinced. I'm still not convinced here. Can we see a little more downside? Sure, maybe towards 220, but after that, I think we're going to bounce. And so it's somewhat mixed signals. Nvidia doesn't look yet prepared to drop. SMH isn't quite there yet, but then you have SOXX with a little space to the downside, but it's still fighting this turbulence here. So there's very much potential for another bounce. And then we'll talk about Tesla. So congratulations to everyone in the Discord that actually traded Tesla with me. We actually absolutely crushed it. And so one thing I want you guys to pay attention to. So we go to the Discord real quick. So I'm gonna go over why I was pretty much trading Tesla, right? And so yeah, we did a trade alert. Tesla 232.5 calls October 25th, 1.95. They're like at 600. They're like $900, worth $900 now. We'll see it open. But yeah, so we did this trade. I let everybody know absolutely that this is a complete lotto and 1000% risky. It's earnings at the end of the day. But one of the reasons I took this trade, and then I'm going to go into the technical analysis of it and just see how far Tesla can go, is one of our tabs. And this is an absolutely amazing tab. It's very much slept on. I don't think a lot of people use it in the Discord, but it gives gems a lot of times for major stocks with earnings coming up. And so right here, you see it says the 32.5 strike on Tesla has the highest open interest, heavily skewed towards calls with 30K contracts flowing in on Monday. October 21st, Tesla reports earnings today after hours. And so we jumped in to this actual play at 213 when Tesla was at 230 13 right before close. So one thing I've mentioned on this channel, and I don't think I talk about it enough. Fair value gaps. Look, fair value gaps are absolute cheat codes. Okay, absolute cheat codes. And what made this so interesting and so easy to trade is one, we're at this weekly level, this horizontal level. I don't know if you guys can actually see it, but this yellow line right here. Absolute weekly level. I mean, but then what they tried to get us with here, and I was a little skeptical at first. We broke below this trend. They absolutely trapped the Bears. I mean, Bears got decimated. And so if you wasn't paying attention to, well, one, if you didn't have these fair value gaps up and you didn't have fair value gaps as an indicator on your thing, on your on your charts, then you easily would have fell for this. Okay, you would have been like Tesla's bearish, it's going to drop. It broke this trend right here. And just so you guys see, I'm not even forcing it. I mean, you bounced off the trend here, you bounced off the trend here, you broke it here, all right, you broke it, and boom, you somebody would have took. I guarantee you, tons of people took puts out there, thinking because they broke this trend, that Tesla broke this trend, that it was just going to continue to go lower. But no, you had. I mean, this was so clean, guys, so clear as day. You have literally no fair value gaps to the downside. Stocks, when it comes to earnings, the main thing I look for is fair value gaps and what direction they are in. If there are fair value gaps to the upside right before a stock's earnings, chances are that stock is going to go up for earnings. Okay. High chance. Okay. Very high chance. But the fact Tesla had absolutely none, I mean, none to the downside, I mean, you couldn't ask for a better trade here. So you had this fair value gap here at around the 230s, and then you have another one. We can go to the, I believe it's the 4 hour time frame. You have this gap here at around 240, which is currently filling, Tesla's currently filling. You have this fair value gap here. I mean, this huge fair value gap that need to be mitigated here. And then you go to the weekly time frame, and I believe there's another fair value gap here. Yeah, right here. So it's not showing the candles, it's not showing, but you're above this fair value gap. So I mean, clear as day. This one down here, you don't pay attention to. It's already mitigating. So I need to erase that. But regardless, I mean, and then you have this hideous head and shoulders pattern, I should say. But regardless, it's following this trend. It hit this support level. You have fair value gaps to the upside, and then the icing on the cake is that one of our tabs pretty much confirmed that there's a lot of whales trading that 232.5 contract on Tesla. So I mean, it was just a beautiful play all around, guys. I mean, you just couldn't ask for a better setup here. And so that's what I'm looking at in regards to the overall market. If you want to join the Discord link is in the description below. Thank you for all your support. And if you want trades like this, again, Discord link is in the description below. Until the next video, traders, have a good one.